Hello, everyone. I'm Madhuri. I'm doing my postdoc at the University of Bonn. I started this position in last June. So basically, I took over the work done by my previous colleague. Today, I will talk about the intercropping in Europe and a systematic mapping study that we are doing on arable grain crop. So the intercropping. Intercropping is growing two or more than two crops at the same time at the same place. It's a very sustainable cropping system. It provides lots of benefit, like give a higher yield with limited resources, particularly is known for organic agriculture. It gives yield stability, could use as an insurance for the farmer, particularly in this climate variability and climate change. It increases resource use efficiency. For example, in the cereal legume crop mixture, cereal can take the nitrogen from the soil, and the legume can use the air nitrogen as a fixation, and thereby reduce the agrochemical use. It increases biodiversity in different level, insect biodiversity, birds biodiversity, because it provides diverse feed for the animal, to improve weed control in many cases. But then the question is why there is a lower adaptation of this sustainable cropping system, particularly in Europe. The answer is it is a bit complex system because the overall benefit of intercropping depends on many factors. For example, the seed rate. So we need to focus on or select or choose the seed of both partners, optimal seed rate, and then the genotype or the varieties of the partner that we are selecting for intercropping. It need to be compatible with each other, should not compete. The management practice, and of course the site, and finally the interaction between all those factors. So therefore, we need to find an optimal intercropping design that fit in this diverse ecological, technological, or economic context in Europe to get this the overall positive effect of intercropping. So therefore, we looked different intercropping research. And a recent published paper, it showed that the research on intercropping is increasing day by day, which is a good news. But then the information, so there is a lot of paper to look. For example, now we did a search last year in a Web of Science with a simple search string, intercropping, and some synonym of it, and it created more than 10,000 articles on intercropping. And now the question is how to find the research gap that exists out of all these articles or all this pile of paper, to improve the experimental design in intercropping so that the scientist or farmer can find a suitable intercropping system that would be productive for their area. For that, we decided to do meta-analysis. So meta-analysis is the analysis of analysis, and the aim is to find systematically all the evidence in an unbiased way. And this is a combination of systematic review and statistical analysis. And the systematic review is to get all the relevant studies dealing with the particular topics, and of course in an unbiased way. And this meta-analysis actually originated from the medical science, where they wanted to synthesize the studies of effectiveness on medical treatment to solve some particular problem. and reach an overall conclusion. So the meta-analysis exists also for intercropping. For example, in 2016, Yu Yong did a meta-analysis, and he asked the question is, what is our worldwide average land equivalent ratio, LER, of intercropping? So with that LER, he meant the relative land area that was required for the crop monoculture to produce the same yield as observed in the mixture. So basically, you get LER by combining two partial LER of two partners, and individual partial LER you will get by dividing the yield in monoculture in mixture with the yield in monoculture. So basically, if the LER is 1, that means mixture doesn't have any effect. If it's higher than 1, mixture is positive over monoculture. Lower than 1, mixture is negative over monoculture. And then he observed with his meta-analysis that the overall LER in worldwide LER, so the mean is 1.16. So that means the worldwide, the efficiency of land use is 16% higher in intercropping compared with monoculture. And yeah, and 2 years ago, one of my colleagues, Madhuri, he did a meta-analysis as well on intercropping. And he looked particularly on different cultivars and different genotypes. For example, here he looked in different cereal crops, and then here he looked on the different legume crops. Yeah, so but this meta-analysis is a bit long way. It involves several steps and procedure. For example, it's first we need to find a research question, like which question we want to ask or which answer we want to find, we want to see. And we need to define the possible metrics to express the quantities of interest. We need dependent and independent variable. We need to define the scope, the population of the studies, so where we want to see which area we would like to see. And then we need to define which information we need to answer that question that we ask at the beginning. And then we need to develop, of course, a search strategy that will find all the available data to answer our research question. And of course, it needs to be unbiased. Then we need to conduct that search. We need to extract the data from the papers. And this is the most time-consuming and tedious process that we are going through last, I guess, 1.5 years. And then we will analyze the data and finally interpret the data, answer the question, and write the paper. So basically, this is the steps in meta-analysis involved. In our case, what we did, we started with a systematic review. So we asked the research question is, what is the state of experimental research of intercropping in Europe for 2 arable grain crop? And we define the possible metrics is the land equivalent ratio, the N input, and the species choice. And the scope is the available evidence on intercropping in geographic Europe. That means we also included Turkey, Great Britain, Norway, and Switzerland. We concentrate all the evidence we found in English, not in other languages. And we decided the information we need to answer that question is the data from the field experiment, like the data from soil crop and intercrop treatment with compatible management. For example, information about densities, the sowing depth, the soil or climate information, the sowing and harvesting time, of course, the nitrogen input and the total grain yield of the both species, both sole crop and intercropping system. So we started with searching and then screening. So as a search engine, we used Web of Science without any time restriction, and the searching had been done last year, so almost 1 year ago. And as a search string, we choose grain crop or all of its synonym, and intercrop and or all of its synonym, plus a country list. And we excluded the paper which written on agroforestry, aquaculture, cover crop, or grassland. So we excluded those papers from our search string. We also choose 30 articles as benchmark article for that search. So that means we selected 30 articles that we want to have in that search. And if this search result contained those 30 articles, then we decided this is a good search, and we were happy about the content of the paper that it contains. So after that, it created around 2080 articles. Then we started with duplication removal with Zotero. Then we did title and abstract screening. And on that, this process, we excluded around 1,400 articles. Then we started with the full text screening, where we also excluded around 170 articles, and that leaves us 445 articles in total for full text screening. So at that point, my colleagues, he started to do a systematic mapping. That means he wanted to see what is the overall intercropping design, or particularly in the management situation is, but is mainly based on vote counting. Yeah, but then I took over and we kind of decided to have a meta-analysis that I explained, so that we can see, we can also include the yield information, which we think is most important, and then we can correlate the management system with the yield. And yeah. So here I will show some results that we found during the systematic mapping, but of course we will later on we'll also concentrate on the yield, and then we'll bring more information about that. So so the preliminary result, we observed the articles, how the articles per countries, and then we saw that the Germany and France actually have most of the articles on intercropping, followed by Poland and Turkey. And then we selected a few papers to see the experimental factors, how it was looking like on Europe. So first, the farming system. Of course, we observed most of the cases is conventional, and around half of the cases is organic. In that case, we only took around 45 articles, not all of them, because still lots of articles need to be studied. Yeah, and also in the farming system, many articles haven't really mentioned what kind of farming system they used. I think many cases we kind of keep it blank. And then spatial design, alternative rows are the leading one here. And also another one is a strip intercropping, is very low in the Europe that we observed till now. And of course, in majority of the cases, they haven't mentioned what kind of spatial design they used for intercropping. And then the density type, so we found the replacement type was the majority one, and the less than additive is very low. although it's a kind of bit known that the farmer prefer less than additive for their intercropping system. Yeah. And the relative sowing time, yeah, many cases it's not found on the paper. So we concluded a preliminary conclusion, like most of the articles, intercropping research is concentrated in Germany, France, followed by Turkey and Poland, and almost no articles on strip intercropping in Europe is found. Of course, is still very preliminary. And then density types that are less than additive are notably under-researched, whereas this is the most commonly used in practice. And there is a lack of information on relative sowing times in many research paper. So that's our preliminary conclusion. And yeah, our future focus will be to do some meta-analysis to extract detailed information. I'm particularly focused on total grain yield in both cropping system, sole crop and intercrop, and see the overall benefit, and also compare it with the management practice. Yeah, so that would be our future plan. Yeah, thank you very much.